I was here last year for another conference, and it's true. The weather here is always like that. And it was very funny when people came up to me and said like, "Hey, we go tubing on the river, so we're gonna float down in tubes and get completely shit-faced with us. That'd be lovely." And I'm like, "Okay, let's put the ginger guy in the sun and see what happens." I live in London. We've got warm rain and cold rain, and we've got 4 seasons within a day. So I'm not used to this kind of stuff, but it's actually quite cute that it actually works out. So today I was asked here to talk about open source, and it was quite bizarre to me because it's a bit like I'm at an open source conference. It's a bit like preaching to the choir. And I was at the speaker room yesterday talking, and I saw people like from the White House and other people talk about the what was it, the enforcement of GPL licensing in software and all things open source. And I was just sitting there, and I'm like, you know, I really like hedgehogs. And actually, the only web celebrity I'm following on Facebook is Penelope Pickles, which is a hedgehog from Canada, and she's awesome. And which shows you that I'm not the kind of guy that goes for like licensing and like these kind of things, but I'm a web developer. And I've been a web developer for 16 years now or something like that. And when I started, it was really like that. We all had these keyboards that we surfed on, and we all held the mouse up because if you have something in your hand like that, it's the best thing you can do while you're surfing. That actually makes total sense. So when the web came out to me, I was a radio journalist first, and I realized like, hang on, anybody can be a celebrity there. Anybody can be important. Anybody who's got something to say can reach people worldwide without having to actually ask a media or TV station or radio station to do it for them. And that was the empowerment that I thought is incredible and we should actually cherish. And a lot of people keep forgetting this, since the web is not there only to look at hedgehogs and kittens. Mostly it is, but there's other things as well. And for a lot of countries and a lot of people, it's the only way to have a voice and the only way to actually make a change in their environment as well. So I work for Mozilla, which is to me was like a dream come true. I worked for a large corporation with starting with a Y. It was very purple and had lots of stuff in there. And I built the maps there, and I built a product called Yahoo Answers, which made me really, really not believe in human intelligence any longer after a while. But it was entertaining after all. So I started at Mozilla, and on the first day, in the job interview, I wrote some code that went into the browser. In the job interview was 6 hours of the best brainstorming I've ever done. I was surrounded by people that trust each other, that put each other into control, rather than just waiting for somebody top down to tell them what the next thing we should build is. And we've been 15 years now. We said that earlier. On the 2nd of April, there's going to be some celebrations. You can donate money and get this really cool plush dinosaur if you wanted to. And historic things happened. I mean, we said before there was this movie about that. So 1998, we released the Netscape browser source code. The mission was drafted. Then Bugzilla came out and is still around. Sadly enough, not much updated. And it's always quite confusing when designers come up to me and say like, that doesn't look good in Firefox. And I'm like, well, just file a bug in Bugzilla. Bugzilla is not pretty. So it's lots of form elements that people have to type things in. But it's there and it works. Then we did the charter where we came up with Mozilla 1.0, Firebird, Phoenix. And then we started the Mozilla Foundation and the manifesto. And the manifesto basically said for the first time that openness, innovation, opportunity are key to the continued health of the internet. And no other company said that. Everybody else said like, we got e-commerce, we got these things, we use our browser, it's the best. Everything else will not make you happy. And then in 2004, we had Firefox 1.0 out, 100 million downloads, and so on and so forth. All of these things happened. But the more important thing to remember is what is the why of Mozilla? Why did we have to be there? And the reason was that you cannot actually protect yourself against a corporate takeover or a large corporation trying to get you out of the market if you're also a corporation. And you need somebody like a non-for-profit to actually stand up for the beliefs that made the internet what it is right now. A company cannot do that because they have to actually go for the next shareholder meeting and have to change their strategy every single time. So people should be able to consume the web on their terms. That's what Mozilla is about. Technology should not be dictated by a corporate agenda. Why should I have to buy a new computer if I want to go online and see something? The internet was built to be consumed by every device, by every connectivity, by every ability of people out there. And we just basically push people into silos every year and tell them like, well, you need this browser to watch this website. The technology isn't that. It's much easier to do that for everybody. Access to the web should not be limited to a certain platform. That was the big problem when Internet Explorer was the only browser, apart from Internet Explorer being the big problem, was that it was only on Windows. And you needed a Windows machine to actually access the internet. Without Mozilla coming out and being for every platform, I'm quite sure things like Wikipedia, things like kittens on the internet wouldn't have happened, because it would be a corporate thing. It would be boxes in offices where people click on like ticketing systems and room booking systems and are unhappy. This is what the internet would be like. People should not have to be products to communicate online. A lot of systems out there give you a lot of information like follow all your friends, follow these celebrities. And while you're doing that, you're giving a lot of your information away. You're becoming a product. Ads are being shown to you, and you're being sold as a product and as a number. And that should not be the case. I should be online and should not be trackable, and should have the right to say, no, I don't want to see ads. I want to pay for something, for example. And a lot of times you can't do that. I tried to pay, for example, for Google Mail. I cannot until I buy the whole apps package, which I don't care about. I just don't want to have any ads in Google Mail, which is not possible at the moment, and I hope they change that. And software should support as many platforms as possible. Every time somebody tells me, oh, our browser is the fastest on this platform, please switch to this platform. No, I paid a lot of money for that computer on the other platform. I'm not going to do that. So the internet was built for worldwide reach and reach across different devices and different environments. This was the Olympic Games in London where I live, where Tim Berners-Lee actually showed this on the big screen, saying like that the internet is for everyone. The World Wide Web that he invented, amongst other people, is actually there for everybody and not just for a rich environment in a certain country. And when I see, for example, that people offer me streaming video, which is better than TV, and then I'm not in the right country to see it, then you haven't understood the internet. This thing is worldwide. It's not like I have to be in a certain country or have a certain credit card to be able to get to this content. So Tim Berners-Lee was really, really good. I met him first time and said, like, thanks for the internet thing. That was quite nice to me. He's an interesting guy. So open source to us and to anybody else, to me, is a protection mechanism, which sounds bizarre because there's a lot of like bad press around, like, oh, open source will never be secure as everything else. But it's a protection system for yourself. You cannot kill an open source project. You cannot just say, this is like, oh, I gave it out as open source and now I'm going to pull it off the market again. As soon as you release it, you're forked. And somebody else will keep it on and start doing things with it and actually building things that you probably didn't think of. And that's the idea of an open source project. You can't buy out an open source project. I cannot say like, well, now I'm paying you guys, you cannot give your code anymore. The code is there, somebody else has it. They have the right to use it. You can't hide in the open. I found that open source projects have better code because code is being written to be maintained, not to just run. A lot of software is being written just to run. Wow. And then when it comes to maintenance, they're like, well, that was the engineer guy that left the company. I don't know what he did there. He didn't comment it. But in open source, you cannot hide bad code because people love to point out that your code is wrong. So I like it because it made me write better code constantly. And the community and the users decide when a platform is not interesting any longer, not the company. I mean, I'm not saying any names here, Google Reader. That some software that is very much liked gets then shut down because of corporate business ideas. So with open source, that doesn't happen. We had a few things where Firefox was ported on platforms that we didn't think support necessary anymore, but the community took it over. Great. That's the idea of it. So we showed the workaround. We showed that as a non-for-profit and open source, you can still make a product that millions of people can use and actually get access to a product that otherwise was locked out. That was a university in Germany. They never realized that people didn't pay for parking. So what happens now? We've got Firefox out there. It's used by millions of people. It is stable. It is fast. It is wonderful. It has a Fox, which is nice. And we went further. We said, like, the next thing that we want to do is actually make sure that people know about the web and know about being makers and not only consumers. So we have a product suite called Mozilla Webmaker, and there's a few things in there. One of them is Mozilla Thimble, which is an educational tool for people who want to start doing HTML. So it's an editor that shows you your results immediately next to it. We do work with journalists, we do work with children, not that they're the same, but we basically help people out to actually build their first website and start publishing on the web. We've got X-ray goggles, which is mostly for kids to actually start realizing that everything on the web is actually for you to look through. So if I do a Command U, I can see that my slides here are actually an HTML document as well. And the X-ray goggles are an add-on that shows children like, hey, this is a paragraph, this is a heading, you can change that image. The web is for you to remix and not only for you to consume and be unhappy about what you see. And Popcorn Maker is an online editing tool for videos that actually allows you to connect video content with live content from the web. So if somebody in the movie talks about a location, we could show a map on top of that video without having to program anything. So that we're working with filmmakers that way to actually get these things out there. But in general, Firefox and Mozilla is not the only thing out there. Open source is rampant. Everybody is using open source. And one of the big companies, well, small companies that made a massive difference there is GitHub. GitHub made it easy to start contributing to open source projects. It made it easy to actually publish open source projects and not to explain people for 6 hours how to set up SVN or Mercurial or something like that. So that go to that website, click that button, download that zip, click that button, say, I want to change this, edit it live in the browser. They made a really, really good job out of making open source easy and contribution easy. And that's why there's so many new projects coming out every week, every day. And I have a lot of developers that I know, for them the first thing, the natural thing to do is to go open source. Not to start like, oh, I'm going to make this and sell it for millions of dollars, because that's most of the time not happening. And open source needs that simplicity. A lot of times you find that people build open source project and expect that everybody thinks like them. So, oh, this is easy. Just go to the command line, build these 5 packages, do a makefile and make install here, some ADB there, and then you're fine. Like, no, this is not going to happen. If we want to beat commercial products or be a better alternative to them, we have to be very, very easy. And GitHub was a great opportunity for that. It's built on an open source platform. It's not open source itself, which is a bit annoying for some people. But I think it's very important that we think users and usability and accessibility and simplicity first, and then we go into like the religious debate of which license and what we want to do with that. So one dangerous movement with a lot of people going into open source is that a lot of them go open source-ish. So it's sexy to be open source. It's like it costs you about $40,000 to get an engineer through the door to start working for your company. So a lot of companies start actually by doing an open source project and trolling GitHub for new people to hire, which is okay. It's actually a better thing than LinkedIn because it's not as completely filled up with stuff that I don't need. And I already see what that person is doing in terms of code and how he reacts to people saying his code is bad and these kind of things. So people skills, sometimes necessary. It's amazing. But there's a few ways how open source is being abused or being like nagged, like little stabby things towards open source. And there's 2 ways actually I see that happening right now. One of them is called Tada source in my book. And that's the kind of open source that happens after the commercial product has been released. The commercial product is out, and then you wait for a few weeks, and then like, here's the source code, and please fix bugs for us. No, you don't have any saying in what the product will look like or what features we're going to build in. That's all ours. But please fix our things, and then you can build things if you wanted to, but the next version of the platform might actually break what you forked off and made anything else with it. So that's the kind of sourcing that I find very, very scary, because it means that the company is still keeping the ownership of it and just wants to use the community to fix bugs for them, or to actually find out and port it to platforms that they don't want to have. A real open source project listens to the community for input as well, and gets feature requests and real feature requests, not just fix requests from the community, and builds things that are not necessarily what the company thought of, but other people thought would be a good idea. The other abuse of open source that I see is like what I call PASTURE sourcing, and that was just a random picture I found there. And, PASTURE sourcing means to me when a company doesn't love a product anymore, then they give it out as open source. It's going to the pasture with the other open source animals, and it gets fed there, and it's happy there. It's just expecting people to keep up a project that you gave up on. And that sometimes is a project that was closed source, so the code is not commented, the code is really, really awful because it was just fix it, fix it, fix it, run it out there, bring something out there. So a lot of people also coming from a very commercial, salesy background start doing little things. I was moderating the conference in Amsterdam called Frontiers. And one of the guys there did a jQuery plugin. And he made quite some money with it, some designy plugin thing. And then he said, like, I get all these email requests. I don't have time for emails. So I basically just gave it out as open source so somebody else can answer the emails for me. And I'm like, that's hiring a call center. That's not doing open source. That is just abusing the community as your workforce without giving anything back to them. Because if you still sell your plugin, you might as well then do a share with that as well. So in Mozilla, with our volunteers that actually do work for us, we share the goodies as well. And we hire a lot of them after a while, but as we know that they're actually knowing their stuff. I've got a budget for events, so if some of our contributors want to go to events or want to speak at events, I can help them out with that. And that's the kind of open source thinking that a lot of companies don't understand. They just think, oh, we give it out for free and then we get free work for that. That's not really the way how it works. There is no magical community appearing and popping up that actually does a lot of work for you. You have to work on that. The same way putting a forum up and thinking that the community will help each other out will actually result in lots of people calling each other names in the forum and uploading pictures that you don't want to see there, not necessarily being helpful to each other. So a community needs guidance, and a community needs helpfulness and needs to be listened to. So both the Tada sourcing and the PASTURE sourcing doesn't give that, so that's why communities don't happen. And then a lot of corporations that go open source and there's no magical community that helps them within a month, then badmouth open source that it doesn't work. They're like, well, if you don't play by the rules, then don't go on that field, or whatever sports metaphor I can come up with because I don't do sports. But that is interesting. One of the corporations that people see as evil and see as terrible, Adobe, are doing a really, really good job at open sourcing their first project. It's called Brackets. It's a text editor that actually, I think I have it here as well. Let's see, Brackets. And it's basically an open source text editor written in HTML and for HTML5. And it has some really interesting tools there. Well, no, I don't want to get it now. And for example, if you're in your HTML and you just right-click on anything with an editor, you can do a quick edit here, and it shows you the CSS directly that is related to that element in the HTML. So you got editing in place, which no other editor does, not even the great Sublime Text that I use for everything else. And the interesting bit about Brackets, no, that's not my slides, that's the other one, is that they're actually open sourcing it, and they have some really cool things going on there. First of all, they have their, they show the sprints, they show the planning, which is in Adobe an unknown thing before that they would show it to public. They don't fix all the bugs themselves, but when they find simple bugs, they actually flag them as beginner bugs and give it out to the community. So if somebody wants to actually start the project, they don't just go in there and see the really brutal things, but they do a few things that are easy to fix, have a good experience, and then start contributing more. And pull requests from the outside of Adobe get actually precedence over the ones from inside Adobe. And that's another thing that wasn't possible before. And this is incredible to see that a company as closed and as big as Adobe actually does this. And that gives me hope for the future of open source, and although some other people do the PASTURE sourcing stuff. Now, we have a new battleground happening, which we realized in Mozilla for quite a while as well. You see the difference between those pictures. And anybody realize what's going on? It's not the color of the president. It's actually the cameras. People use smartphones. People don't sit in front of their desktop at home anymore and basically just have a keyboard and a Windows XP machine. Smartphones are rampant. Everybody has smartphones in the developed world and wants to do things with them. And these things are great because you can talk to people worldwide, so you don't have to talk to the people next to you. And you can keep yourself occupied rather than using human language and stuff. It's really interesting. And but the market is just huge, and it's a competitive and closed market. And it's a market that actually it's a market that thrives on being closed and thrives on having its patents on everything and thrives on like being secretive about things. And that doesn't fly with open source. That's the opposite of it. So when we in Mozilla realized people have smartphones don't do the web thing, we got to go into that market somehow. Oh, that's problematic. So what do we do about this? Especially what you got to know about these markets is that they love giving people fear. So the big word is fragmentation. Oh my God, fragmentation. People might have different phones and different sizes and different operating systems. Like, that's not a market we can work with. That's just terrible. Like, how dare we give our end users the choice of finding a different phone out there? There should be one phone issued by the government for everything. Really. For us as web developers, this is not new. Fragmentation is choice. I never knew what kind of resolution you were running. I never knew what kind of computer you were using. I didn't know if you're in a 3G environment, if you're in a fast internet environment, or if you're in the US on your mobile phone. I just did not know, and I did not care. I wrote software that is clever enough to realize that there's different screen sizes and give you the best experience for that device while you're using it. And that's something that a lot of people don't get. It's a strange market, that whole mobile market. Like 70% market share has Android at the moment, but Apple is taking 70% of the profits. Samsung made 4 billion in profit, and Google made less at 2.89 billion, making the platform that Samsung runs on. And the only two companies making any money seems to be Apple and Samsung at the moment, which is quite bizarre if you think about how many players are in there, and everybody's saying like, that's the coolest, newest phone that you should have. And it started well. I mean, when Steve Jobs, visionary that he was, brought out the iPhone, and despite saying we've got 200 different patents on that thing, he said one thing, and that was, there's no SDK required. This is a smartphone that actually has the web on it. It has the Safari web browser, which is called the best web browser in the world. And it can do everything that the web can do on a phone. You can do telephone calls from websites. You can actually go to a map application from the website. You can do everything that's out there. And I was like, wow, awesome. I can do web stuff on the phone that I couldn't do before, because with feature phones, it was never fun. And then he got a massive backlash from inside the company and from developers, because he said first that the phone is running on OS X. So every Cocoa developer, yay! Oh wait, he wants to do the web thing? I don't know what that web thing is about. That web thing was never good enough. So he got this really big backlash from the company as well. And I was thinking, why is that the case? What was going on there? And I did some research, and it actually goes back to the 1950s, what's going on there. And it's something that has been affecting us all for the last, well, how many years it was since the 1950s. It's an old idea, actually in the Journal of Retailing, and it's called built-in obsolescence, which is not only a hard word to pronounce, but actually a very strange thing. The Victor Lebo back then said that our enormously productive economy demands that we make consumption our way of life, that we convert the buying and use of goods into rituals, that we seek our spiritual satisfaction, the ego satisfaction in consumption. We need things consumed, burned up, replaced, and discarded at an ever-accelerating rate. That sounds evil, but this is what we have been doing for the last 50 years. These shoes are original Doc Martens, 14 years old. Doc Martens is now not an English company anymore, it's a Chinese company now. The new Doc Martens have break after a year. You cannot sell a product that's too good. You have to make products that break. That's how you make money. And it just drives me nuts that we just completely swallow that and say like, yeah, that makes total sense. No, it doesn't. I've got this wonderful Hoover. It's called a Henry. It's another English company, and it's basically this Hoover that has a face on it. It's a Hoover with a face. There's no other question why I should buy it. But I bought it because of the Amazon review, which said I was really, really disappointed by that one because it only lasted 8 years after the last one lasted 15 years. So I'm like, this is cool. If somebody's annoyed that it only lasts 8 years, that's a product I can deal with. But not being able to change my battery in my phone when it breaks, not being able to actually have a connector that all the other chargers that I had before connect to, that just drives me nuts. Like, why should things break so quickly? Why should I actually be forced to buy things constantly all the time? It also means that we don't take pride in our production anymore because we know this thing should break. And then, as evil minds think alike, a year before, actually, Clifford Brooks Stevens even took that further by saying, like, we have to have a planned or built-in obsolescence of style as well. So we say we need to instill the buyer the desire to own something a little newer, a little better, a little sooner than is necessary. So make things look outdated by having celebrities show that new phone and things like that. And that showed when the whole Instagram came out, Instagram for Android. There was this big outrage on the internet about like, oh my God, all the Android phones have really bad cameras in them, so the quality of Instagram will be much, much worse now because the Android guys are coming on Instagram. And a journalist friend of mine in England actually hit the nail on the head when he said like, when he tweeted about it, he said like, oh my God, now we have Android for Instagram, Instagram for Android. Now we got to see what poor people eat. Because everybody just take pictures of their food with that anyways. Like, it's not a project that is like life-threatening or life-changing. But it's like when we were at Mobile World Congress, I talked to all the different phone providers, and you're like, so what do you have here? Oh, we got a new phone. What does it do? Oh, it's bigger. How does that make a difference to me? Well, it's bigger. It's like, it's stylish, it's new, it has like features on it. I mean, just like when they bring out like little celebrity things for the background, that's already something. So all of that meant that Apple and others had to put HTML5 into the background because you cannot build a product that is obsolete on an open platform, on a platform that is easy to change and by its nature is changing constantly. So native platforms have much tighter control. I can do the things that I say, oh, this new game, it's awesome, it's amazing, but you need the newest version of that phone, which only runs on that more expensive phone. So sorry, you can't play that game, and all your cool friends have it. In HTML5, you can't do that because you cannot block out browsers. It's easier to make older phones obsolete by writing software that needs new features that is only in the newest, coolest phone. You can build your own functionality without standardizing. Like, why should I actually give you that cool stuff that we can do on our phone? That is our competitive advantage. And mobile browsers are hardware bound and block HTML5 access to hardware. And that is to me the most annoying thing, because nobody likes Internet Explorer 6 anymore. But nobody on Windows XP can upgrade to further than Windows 8, Internet Explorer 8. Locking the browser into the operating system means you make the browser obsolete with the operating system and the phone. And that's not what a browser is about. It's the choice that people have what they want to use on their machines. So all of that does not fly with Mozilla. We were pouting and we were like, this is not right. We got to do something about that. So the first thing we did is we ramped up Firefox for Android. We rewrote it from scratch in Java instead of Zool because Zool was too slow on Android. And we now have a browser that actually is available on Android, gives you the full HTML5 specs and support that Firefox gives you on desktop, back to Froyo, back to the old version of Android. Whereas Chrome for Android is only available for the newest, coolest Androids right now. Which I don't know why that decision has been made, but it annoys the hell out of me, because the stock browser of Android has to die. That thing is just awful. That thing is the new Internet Explorer 6. With some evil stuff on top of it. So then we said, okay, that's good. It also has like features like reader mode and all the things that users want to have on a mobile phone. But then we realized that's not enough. Android is cool, it's open, but Android still has to compete with Apple in that ever-changing market of obsolete products. So we have to do something about this. So we came up with a new operating system called Boot to GECKO back then, which is the Linux layer of Android. And then we got rid of all the Java stuff in between and just put GECKO on top of that, which is the browser engine of Firefox. So we have a browser engine on top of Linux with a lot of open APIs and open drivers to actually talk directly to the hardware from the browser without having to do any conversion through another layer. So that way, the phones that actually run Firefox OS can be a much lower spec than anything that Android or iOS supports. Well, iOS only supports one phone anyway, so there's a difference. And then we built Gaia, which is an HTML5 interface on this operating system. So everything in Firefox OS, or Boot to GECKO back then, is HTML5. You don't write anything in Java, you don't write anything in C#, you don't write anything in Cocoa or Visual Objective-C. All of it is web standards, open web APIs, and standardized ways to access the hardware, which other browsers now implement as well. For example, the battery I can read out in my browser now, and that one is across all browsers because we built this for Firefox OS or GECKO. So we had GECKO, and we were really excited. I was here, as you can see. And we went to Mobile World Congress, which is the mecca for selling mobile phones. It's the largest conference out there, 1.7 million people in 3 days. One of the most evil sales shows I've ever been at. And we went there last year and showed GECKO as an idea and as a prototype. And people like, yeah, that's cool, that's interesting. So let's see where that goes. And we went back after that initial feedback, and was good feedback, and talked to lots and lots of providers. And talked to lots and lots of people out there and say like, what would an operating system, a new operating system for the mobile market need that is actually not there at the moment? And we had a few things there. One of them is basically connectivity. Like HTML5 on iOS is bad, it's hard to make offline, and hard to actually find ways to actually make engaging apps that are small, because native apps are rather huge. And if I'm on my contract, like if I use my UK card here, internet browsing costs £1.50 per megabyte. That's about $4. So when a great upgrade of Angry Birds new level comes out, because that shows me a new bird or something, I download 23 meg of that. That's not right. So we got to find a way to actually make apps easier, make apps smaller, make apps faster. The other problem was that credit cards are necessary for all app purchases. So if you don't have a credit card, you don't get anything. My brother doesn't have a credit card. I keep having to send him like these vouchers and stuff so he can actually go online and buy apps for himself. But he doesn't have a credit card. And credit cards, you know, is these things where you basically lend money that you don't have from the people that ask for a bailout from your tax money from the government. Like that whole concept. So that connectivity and functionality is dependent on how rich I am. That's not the internet. That's not right. So we had to find something there. So with Firefox OS, we partner with 18 different mobile phone providers at the moment worldwide. The first ones are Telefonica in South America. They're going to bring it out in Brazil, in Venezuela, in Colombia, some others. Telenor from Norway are going to release the phone in Hungary, and Deutsche Telekom are going to release it in Poland. And all of those do carrier billing, which means you can buy apps on your telephone bill. Or you can actually get a phone, put $50 on there, give it to your kid and say like, you got $50 of apps. You don't wake up next morning looking at your credit card and your son bought like $60,000 overnight. So that's a good thing too. The interface can be changed for every provider. The operating system itself is open. So instead of having one marketplace to rule them all, we made an API for marketplaces. So you could build your own, or you could use the marketplace of Mozilla to actually put your apps out there. But it's even better, but I'm going to show it in a second. We went back this year. We did a bit of rebranding. We had this great Fox thing, because everything that is orange and shiny is good. And we killed it. We absolutely killed it. Every single press release was about Firefox OS. The 2 days, the first 2 days, they have this internal magazine for Mobile World Congress, Firefox OS first page. New markets, new users that don't get iOS, that don't get Android, that actually now can get smartphones. We don't want to kill iOS, we don't want to kill Android with that. We want to replace feature phones. We want to finally allow people to get rid of their old Nokias, their Samsungs, their whatever they have, and actually be online. That's what Mozilla is about. Get people online on their own terms. And this is what we're doing with Firefox OS. So it was really the star of the show. People just came and took photos. The amount of times people just took a picture of the USB outlet fascinated me. Like, it's a USB outlet. That's the standard. That's how the tech press works in mobile, I guess. And I explained it to like 54 interviews in 3 days in 4 languages. And it was just incredible what people came up with and what they asked me. And so I want to quickly show you what it is about. So I said it's a phone that's completely open source, yada, yada, yada. We love this. People don't care. But they realized that like people can afford that phone in markets where an iPhone is 5 months of wage. And then they don't have a credit card to actually use anything with. So it gives you a completely new market out there. So if you want to try it out, the phone is here. I've got one. These are worth gold right now because they're not out there right now. I had to steal that from a colleague. He's not listening, so it's all good. But we have an editor here in the browser that actually is a simulator for the system. So there I have my apps offline here on my computer that I could actually try out and actually have in my editor. And then I can start the emulator. And the emulator right now looks like that. I got my console and I got my operating system here. As I said, this looks like any other operating system, but nothing in there is not HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript. So anybody who can build a website can build an application. And this is where the main differentiator came in. Because right now, building an HTML5 app is awesome, but at the same time, the native apps are the ones that people talk about because there's lots of marketing around the obsolescence principle that I said before as well. Like they always mention like, oh, HTML5 is not fast enough, it's not fast enough, it's fast enough. But what do people want to do when they go online, when they go try out an app? Do you want to go, say you want to listen to a band? Do you want to go to the market and know the name of the application? Do you want to go through 10,000 different reviews of people that probably have been paid to review it in a nice way? Or do you just want to enter the band name, say for example now U2, which is easy to type. And then you see in the background here already that we have the change, it changed to the U2 band. It realized this is a band U2. And it shows me applications that have content that has to do with YouTube, with U2. I've got YouTube for videos, I've got Grooveshark for music, I've got SoundCloud for music, I've got Wikipedia, Metro Lyrics, I've got Songkick concert tickets. It realized that I'm entering a band and gave me the apps for that band. So instead of having to know the app, instead of having to promote the app as the app maker, instead of having to print stickers and actually go out there, people can find your application by use case. So I can say, for example, restaurants here. And then it finds me Yelp, Top Table, Urban Spoon, Food Spotting, and so on and so forth. So we made app discovery and app distribution as easy as putting things on the web, which was the main success factor of the web from the beginning, that I could just write some HTML and put it up on a page. All you have to do is to get your application in there is write a manifest file. So let's try that out. Let's be wild because we don't have much time. That's good. So, for example, I've written this little app on my server, http thewebrocks.com demos / what to pack. This is an app that just runs in HTML5. So I can actually go to my browser as well, can try it out here, and I see the same application here. I can see how cold is it at home, London, England. And I get now the depressing thing that it's 37 degrees Fahrenheit. This one runs on the browser and resizes itself automatically. Now, if I want you to install that app on Firefox OS, I don't have to send you to the marketplace. I have an install button there, which is a JavaScript call. Say install the thing in Firefox OS, what to pack is installed. Now I can go there, can find it, click it, full screen. No browser anymore. My mobile version of that site has become the ad for my application. I don't have to actually promote it anywhere else in the market. The discovery and the distribution of applications becomes as easy as publishing things on the web. And that to me was the main differentiator that we wanted to make sure that people understand, that you don't have to play to the rules of a marketplace that can pull your app anytime. You can actually publish it from your site. If you already have a news website that people go to every day, you can put that install button in there with one line of JavaScript. And all you had to do was actually write a manifest file. Web app manifest, which is not found. Awesome. But actually, it's just a manifest file that shows you what's going on there. Okay, I'm not going to show that. But what it does, it just tells you, this is my app, this is the name, here are the icons, this is the things that I want to access on the phone. And that's what you do. Now, of course, we cannot allow any application on the web to access everything on the phone. We cannot allow an app to do a telephone call without you realizing it. So we have the web APIs to make telephone calls, to make SMS messages, to access everything in the hardware. But the apps that actually can access everything have to be hosted on our market because of security, and they go through a security audit and make sure that everything works out. That does not mean that you cannot do a telephone call from an app that you host yourself. It just means that you go through the same process that you did in the first iPhone version, that you actually say in JavaScript this time, here's a telephone number, please call that. The application would go to the dialer of the phone. The end user has to press the button to send the phone off, so he actually realizes he's making a phone call. And when he hangs up, it goes back to your application and gives you the time and how long the call was and so on and so forth. So in iPhone, the HTML5 integration, the first one was basically just like a telephone number that you click on, you go to the dialer, and you're gone. You don't go back to your app. You have to do that by hand. With web activities, you go back to the app with the data that came from the activity that the user did. So when I do a pick activity, it can actually pick a picture from the gallery, from your screenshots, or from your camera. They can take a picture. As soon as the picture is taken, it goes back to your application and gives you the picture as data. So I've got full access to it, but I have the user in control rather than an app randomly being in control to the end user. And we have to stop actually logging into and validating as the user on the user's behalf, because that is how all the hacking of like Twitter and stuff works right now. The end user should be in control of where they're logging in and where that data goes. And it's not convenience if some app does that magically for me if it loses my data halfway through. So what if you want some of that? Like, I can see that it's really very exciting. I was like, yes, where is it? What can I do? The starting point for everything is the developer hub. It's actually on Mozilla marketplace.com, marketplacefirefox.com/developers. There we explain to you what a good designed HTML5 application is. We tell you how to build it. There's no SDK at the moment. A lot of developers come like, where's the SDK? And you're like, it's the web. Use whatever you want. We're building a few libraries. We're working with other libraries to actually put some packages together to make it easier to get them started. But it's not needed. It's like the power of the web is that you can choose what you want. You don't want to like, oh my God, I've got such a big hard drive. I probably want to have 6 gig of IDE there because I don't want to use it for anything else. And then it explains to you how to publish it. Actually, all you do is take your manifest file, put it in the marketplace, copy and paste the manifest URL in, and we give you an email back after we reviewed it and we list it in the marketplace. So the what to pack application that I wrote is in the marketplace. Just tried it out a week ago. It's working. And nothing is wasted. That's the great thing about HTML5. If you write an HTML5 application nowadays, you can work for Firefox OS, which gives you the best access to the hardware and gives you the access to the markets that the other places can't reach. But it works totally fine with Android. If I got Firefox on Android, I can actually install all these applications running full screen on Android as well. So the what to pack application I put on my Android as well without having to do any change. I just basically realized it's a better phone, it's faster, but the app works as well. And if you write the app for the bad environment, for the slow environment, it will be much better in the better one. If you write it for the better one, you will just disturb anybody else who's actually using a not as fast phone. You can also use Apache Cordova or Adobe PhoneGap to actually convert HTML5 applications into WebOS, iOS, Android, Bada, Microsoft, BlackBerry, and all the other native apps. So you can convert HTML to those. You can't turn it the other way around. So that's really cool as well. A lot of the iOS apps that you're using are actually HTML5 apps. You're just not the wiser because you don't need to be. But it's the great thing that you write it once and you convert it to the others. If you want to do something that only works on iOS, you probably want to write a native app. But if you want to write something for the web, nothing gets wasted. And that's the cool thing about that. So how did we make the open work? How did we get into a market that was evil and closed and terrible and actually wanted to show them what's going on? Find the biggest need that closed can't fill. Disturb the current order of like, oh, we need new phones every month and we need our users to buy new phones and we need rich users and we need users that actually have credit cards and we want to make money with that thing. Think about what a market is that other people don't have. And that, to our case, is these countries where we release Firefox OS with our partners. Brazil has millions of people, and these millions of people cannot afford these very, very expensive phones. They're actually getting stolen really quickly there. And it was interesting doing research because we, instead of just building an app, building an operating system and hoping that people like what they want, We just went there and sent our UX researchers there for 4 months and interviewed people, see how they use their their feature phones, see what they want to have. So one of the things we built into Firefox OS, which no other system has, which I thought never was necessary, is actually we've got an FM radio in there. So you can actually listen to radio on your phone, and there you go. If I had a headphone in there, I could listen to FM radio, because everybody does that in Brazil. People sitting there and listen to radio rather than listen to MP3s because they pay per megabyte that they actually get and download. So listening to radio was a thing that we built in there because people wanted to have it. So partner with the right people, make them part of the solution. So all the partners that we have in Firefox OS are not partners that basically like wait for us to build it and then sell it for us. They actually wrote half of the code. They wrote a lot of the, they have engineers full-time on it. Telefonica has 10 full-time engineers. Telenor has 4 full-time engineers working only on the GECKO Gaia core. So instead of just saying like, hey, we're building this open source project for you, please sell it for us, do it with us. Be a community, be open, and actually learn that by that your other products might get more open as well. Think of the whole ecosystem. Don't think just like I write the best software. Think about what is the problem. And the problem was, in this case, credit cards and data traffic. And the data traffic was a very, very big part of it as well, that we even built a system into the operating system that gives you information all the time how far you're down in the usage right now. So it actually gives you alerts and stuff saying like how long you've been online and how much data you've been using, which is not working here because there's no SIM card in it. Haha. But think about how people use that and what market you want to disrupt. Not just saying like, we're open, hey, we're the better choice, we're open, we're the nice guys, why don't you use us? Because it doesn't make a difference for people in that ecosystem. Find the thing that others can't do and actually do it then. And share and allow for reuse. All of the things in Firefox OS are open source. The APIs are defined as standards sent to the working group and to the W3C. So other browsers can actually use them as well on the desktop now. All the systems, all the apps can be used on desktop and on Android as well. It's not another closed system. It's just like, hey, make it extensible. There's nothing better than having a system that can be extended by other people without having to mess around with the core of your system. And that's what we did with that. So the API to make a marketplace is basically possible to build your own marketplace inside your company behind your firewall, for example. The payment API is just a JavaScript API. So all the things are available web-wide and not just inside Firefox OS, because we wanted to be the one who's basically saying open. There's other open players. This is cool as well. It's like Ubuntu came out with their platform for mobile phones, but they only run on really hardcore phones again. Sailfish was another one. Tizen is another one. But they all target the higher end spectrum of phones. And then they get into the problem of the obsolescence fight with the Apples and the Googles and the Samsungs. And they have a lot of marketing money that you don't have. So it's going to be an interesting thing how many people are going for Ubuntu. I wish them luck. I wish them happy because they're open and nice guys as well. I just think that if we want to disrupt, we need to disrupt where people can use our stuff, not for the rich and beautiful of the Western world. And that's all I had, so thank you very much.
All right, I don't have a mic, so I'm just going to talk louder. We're going to break for 15 minutes. We're going to break till 10:30, and we'll try to pick back up our tight schedule. Take a look at your schedules. Thank you very much. Take a look at your schedules, and especially the floor layouts. Understand where the track is you want to go. Make sure you're there as soon as possible at 10:30. Lunch is from 12:15.